Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our latest Facebook Q&A Live. This evening we've got a focus on healthcare and benefits. And tonight our team, I'm Aidan Hallett, I'm the Vice Consul at the Embassy, and I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. Jerry?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jerry Williams, and I'm a Regional Consular Policy Advisor working on citizens' rights.
Vittoria?
Hello, good evening. I'm Vittoria Dominigliani. I'm the Regional Healthcare Advisor working for the Department of Health and based at the British Embassy in Rome.
And Federica?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Federica Parisori. I'm a caseworker at IOM and I work on the Project UK National Support Fund.
Thank you. Obviously, we hope that we will be able to answer as many, we'll do our best to answer as many of your questions as we possibly can. There's every chance, on the basis of past experience, that there'll be more questions than we can answer, but we'll do our very best. If we get a series of questions about the same thing, we might only answer one of them, because obviously that should answer several people's queries. But we'll do our utmost to try and cover as much ground as we can in the hour that we've got. And as usual, if you post questions on the Facebook page or on the YouTube link, they'll be picked up and fed to us so that we can try to answer them. Just by way of introduction, Vittoria, I don't know whether you'd like to say something just to sort of set the scene in terms of healthcare in particular in this post-Brexit world.
Yes, I think we can start by saying we will try to focus in this session on withdrawal agreement rights. So I will start by saying that, as most of you probably know by now, under the withdrawal agreement, if you were living in Italy before the 31st of December 2020, your rights to access healthcare remain unchanged, including reciprocal healthcare, so your rights to an S1 or to a UK Ehic. As you know, there's been another agreement between the UK and the EU in December, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, which also includes a protocol which covers social security coordination and reciprocal healthcare, which has brought some changes, but they don't affect people who are covered under the withdrawal agreement. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement is still a very good agreement for the UK and Italy, because basically it means that reciprocal healthcare continues also for future travelers, people who decide to move to the EU after the 31st of December. But that doesn't, whatever the Trade and Cooperation Agreement covers, it doesn't affect the rights of the withdrawal agreement. So whatever you knew about your rights under the withdrawal agreement, stay the same. Yeah. Okay,
that's just, it's a really important thing to remember. Whatever is said about trade agreements, the citizens' rights have been established. I haven't seen any questions coming in yet. I hope I'm looking in the right place. But
shall we say a few, Aidan? Shall we say a few words in a bit more detail about what Vittoria's already said, which is, I suppose we could talk about different groups of people. So, for example, if you were living in Italy before the end of last year and you were working, then, and do jump in, Vito, if I get any of this wrong, then you would be paying contributions and your employer pay contributions, which means that you're registered for healthcare and you, with your local ASL, and you have access to healthcare as a worker. If you're self-employed, as a registered self-employed, you would be able to be registered for healthcare. But you might also be, for example, retired in Italy, but in receipt of a UK state pension, for example, and that means you would be eligible for an S1 from the UK, as Vito's already said, and you would use that to register for healthcare. So there's sort of different ways of accessing healthcare in Italy. I'm bound to have forgotten some, Vito. Do you want to say any more groups?
I think it's worth mentioning that the Italian healthcare system is different from the UK system, where in the UK your entitlement to healthcare is based on your residency. So you don't need to prove that you pay social security contribution, even though you need to be settled in the UK. There are different ways you can prove that. While in Italy, it's based on social security, your entitlement is based on social security contributions. So it's not an automatic entitlement. As Jerry was saying, if you work, you pay social security contributions through your employers. So you have an automatic entitlement through your work contract. Also entitled, even though there are sometimes complications, because after the first time you register, you need to prove that you keep paying enough, a good amount of social security contributions into the system to have your healthcare renewed. But there's also a way to register if you don't pay social security contributions by paying into the system a voluntary contributions. It's called iscrizione volontaria. It's based, the calculation of how much you have to pay is based on your income. So it means you pay an amount into the healthcare system every year, and then you have full cover in Italy. As Jerry was saying, as part of reciprocal healthcare, you can also register by, if you are in receipt of an S1. So if you are a state pensioner, the moment you start drawing a UK pension, you can apply for this certificate, S1 certificate, which you register with your local health authorities. It means that you are covered in Italy, so you receive an Italian health card, but the UK is competent for your healthcare. So the UK will keep paying for your healthcare through an internal procedure, so you don't need to worry about that because it's a process between the two countries. So it's not something you need to worry about. But basically, Italy will bill the UK for all your healthcare costs. So that's the process, the way it works. Also, if you are an S1 holder, you are entitled to a UK Ehic, so the European Health Insurance Card, which will cover you for any necessary care when you're traveling in the EU. You don't need one for Italy, you don't need one when you go to the UK, but it's just for use when you're traveling across the EU. We're all aware that under current restrictions, it's not really possible to travel at the moment, but it's good to remember that hopefully in the near future we will be able to start traveling again. So it's good to have your Ehic with you. If you don't have one, you can always apply for a replacement certificate of your Ehic by calling the overseas healthcare team in the UK, and they will issue you with a temporary document that will be evidence that you are covered. If you are insured in Italy, so if you are, for example, registered through your work in Italy, you are also entitled to a European health card, which is issued by Italy. And it's called TEAM in Italian, and it's part of your health card. So your blue plastic card. On one side, you have the details of your tessera sanitaria, so your codice fiscale, your personal details. At the back, you have a section where it says Tessera Sanitaria Europea, and that's the one you need to use if you are insured with Italy when you travel across the EU, but also when you go to the UK. Because if you travel to the UK, that card remains valid. So for any necessary care, you can use that card, even if you are a British national. It doesn't mean that you cannot use that card. You need to use it, actually, because in this case, the UK is competent for your healthcare. Sorry, Italy is competent for your healthcare. So if you're registered in Italy because you work here, because you pay your social security contributions here, Italy will cover for your healthcare even if you visit the UK.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, I've got some questions in now, and some of them tie into what you've just been saying. So I think I'll feed them in. Louise Morgan on YouTube says, at what age can you apply for an S1? Is it just when you reach state pension age, or is it when you retire?
It's linked to your state pension. So when you receive your UK state pension, I don't think there's the age would be linked to the time when you qualify for a pension. So I don't know what the pension. I guess it changes according to people's circumstances. So, but the moment you apply for you receive a UK state pension, you can apply for an S1.
Yeah. Yeah,
and if you move to Italy before the 31st of December, you receive you might be asked to just confirm when you move to Italy, because there is a slight difference between an S1 issued under the withdrawal agreement or the TCA. So for people who are covered under the withdrawal agreement, everything will be exactly the same as it was before, and so you would just get your S1 under the previous EU regulations.
Okay, thank you. Somebody's Paul Johnson saying, I'm in Umbria. I'm not yet eligible for an S1 form, but the ASLA seems unable to enrol me, even with voluntary payments. Now, it may be that there's a particular situation that Paul's in, but I don't know if you can comment on that, Victor.
Yes, we know there is a particular situation in Umbria, and we have engaged with Umbria about this issue in the past months. We know they are looking into that because Umbria is the only region, as far as we are aware, that doesn't allow any EU nationals, not just the UK nationals, any EU national to register for the voluntary scheme. As a third country national, you can, but not as an EU national. So in Umbria, the regional authorities are aware there is a possible gap, and they're looking into this situation. And we hope to have some news about this and to be able to update you in the near future. At the moment, what I can advise you to do is to keep calling your ASL, your ASL, like once a week, for example, just to, refresh their memory and let them know that you are interested in the voluntary scheme and you would like to register as soon as it's made available. We know that they are interested also to hear what kind of interest there is in Umbria for this kind of scheme. So I would advise you to keep calling your ASL and renew your interest, so they know that,
Thank you. Samantha Nelson is asking, what is the minimum healthcare we need? I've been advised that I need private healthcare, but it would be helpful to have some more guidance as to where to obtain this.
So it depends. I think the minimum could be related to residency requirements. Maybe Federica can intervene and correct me. But in terms of residency requirement, the Italian authorities require that the private health insurance gives you comprehensive cover across Italy. So the same cover that you will get in the public system for all eventualities. This is what I understand. We don't have a list. At least I don't have a list of private healthcare providers that I can advise you to check. But I know that if you check online on any of the major insurance policy, they'll be able to advise you on what kind of insurance you need for certain purposes. So the only requirement is under the residency registration, as far as I'm aware. If you're already resident and at the moment you don't have cover, it would be still advisable to get full cover, because that would count also towards your permanent residency status when you will qualify for one. Because in theory, even though not all town halls do the checks that they could be doing, we understand that in order to qualify for the permanent resident status, you need to be able to prove that for the 5 years you were resident, you also had full healthcare cover, and at that point you qualify for permanent resident status. I don't know if Federica wants to add something to that.
Thank you, Vittoria. No, I think you were very comprehensive in your response, and I fully agree with what you said.
Just on the question of permanent residency, we've had a couple of questions. Joanne Dunkley said she went to her local ASLA today to renew her tessera sanitaria. She became a permanent resident last year, The ASLA said, yep, she doesn't have to pay a voluntary contribution now on account of being a permanent resident, but they've only given her a TESRA with a year's validity till 2021. Is that correct? I mean, is the validity of the TESRA Sanitaria in any way linked to the whole question of permanent residency and not needing to pay voluntary contributions any longer? Or is it just a quirk that she's got one for 1 year and she'll be able to renew it?
So my understanding is that once you have permanent residency status, you are entitled to permanent healthcare registration. So your entitlement shouldn't expire. What I know is that some ASL, and it really depends from each region or even from each area, does not necessarily in the same region you might find different procedures. It might be that they just renew it every year because they want to make sure you're still resident. That's because my understanding is that it's a very internal administrative process where if you are registered, if you show in the records of the healthcare system, it means that Italy has to pay a certain amount every year to make sure they have enough GPs, for example. So for their internal processes, they want to make sure that the numbers they have correspond to the actual reality of residents. So that might be an explanation to what you just said. In my experience, most ASL, once you are a permanent resident, issue a permanent healthcare registration, so without expiry date. Okay. But the fact that they issued one for 1 year might be explained in these terms, I think.
Okay, thank you. Sheena Gibson says, I've got an S1 and I've got an Italian TESRA Sanitaria. I'm a pensioner. Do I need health insurance as well?
You don't, unless you specifically want to have a private health insurance because you prefer to have treatment in with private clinics. But the S1 gives you full entitlement to state-funded healthcare. So with the S1, you are entitled to a GP and to any healthcare treatment facility that it's available in Italy as any Italian national in Italy. So the answer is no, you don't need it. It's something that you can do if you want, if you wish.
Okay. Julie Dixon says, can I use a private health card while I'm awaiting my S1 form?
Well,
private healthcare, I imagine. Sorry.
Yes,
healthcare. Yes.
Course. Yes, I would say so. I mean, if you're not entitled to register in any other way, and the voluntary scheme is not an option for you, but it's something that you could look into. The alternative.
She says she's 75 and she's got permanent residency with a UK pension. So it sounds as if she should be getting healthcare anyway. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, if she has a UK pension, she should be getting an S1 as soon as possible. This is my advice. As a permanent resident, she should also be entitled to have, if she has the permanent resident status, she needs to have the status of permanent resident. She can also register for on the basis of a permanent resident status, but, and this is something that I've recently found out, if you are entitled to an S1, the S1 entitlement prevails of your permanent resident status. So if you, for example, previously registered as a permanent resident, the moment you become entitled to an S1, you should register an S1. Because it means that in your life you paid your social security contributions in the UK, so it will be always the UK that will have to be responsible and pay for your healthcare. It's all related to costs, to money, unfortunately, but that's how it is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Penelope Phillips-McIntyre, if I've got a private health insurance policy via work or by choice, is it correct for my ASLA to say that I can't also pay to join the SSN because I've got this private policy already?
This is a very good question, and I heard someone else mentioning that recently. I don't know the answer, to be honest, because as far as I'm aware, it shouldn't be the case, because your registration with the public health system shouldn't be influenced by any private health cover that you have. I mean, I'm aware of many Italian nationals that are registered in the public system, but also have parallel private policies. So my understanding is that shouldn't be the case. But I heard of another case where the ASL is making this point. So I want to make some further inquiries and about this issue. And if I manage to get the information, we will publish the answer in the write-up after this session. We will post a write-up of the answers, and we will try to include this part as well. At the moment, I'm sorry, I don't have the correct answer to this question.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a bit of a sidestep here to a question that has only been raised by one person at the moment, but I'm sure is on a number of people's agenda. Fiona Kendall, what particular provision, if any, is being made for UK nationals who are resident in Italy to get the COVID vaccine? And I think we could possibly add a secondary question to what about UK nationals who are in Italy but not officially resident, and what's their position? But let's deal with the residents first, if we can.
So if you are resident, if you're resident and you have an Italian health card, so it's not just about having your residency, but you need to have the health card, you fall under within the current campaign, so you can book an appointment to have your vaccine when it's your turn, depending on the category you belong to. So you can book online, depending on where you live. So in some regions you book online, other regions you have to call, other regions you get an appointment via your GP. So if you have an Italian health card, you have access. And you should keep an eye on the current booking appointments that are available. Another issue is for people who are resident but don't have an health card, because we know that eventually all UK nationals, all foreigners who are present in Italy physically but are not registered in the system, we know that eventually they will also be entitled to the vaccine. But at the moment, we understand there are no provisions for this to happen, because the only way you can book is via your GP or via your health card reference number. So if you don't have one, we have tried, we have talked to various authorities. If you don't have one at the moment, it's not possible. So I would suggest you keep checking also our living in guides information that we publish online, that we will let you know if there is a change in this sense.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question from Shane Walton, who said, I was made redundant in 2019 and I haven't worked since. We moved in Italy October last year, so obviously before the end of the transition period, to start a B&B. He says, how can I receive a health card as I have no income for 2020?
So if you are unemployed because you previously worked in Italy, you should still be entitled to healthcare cover on the basis on your unemployment status.
I don't think he's worked in Italy at all. He was made unemployed, I think, in the UK in 2019, and then moved to Italy last year. And they're running now, starting to run a B&B. But he's saying, at the moment, I've got no income because we've only just moved and we've only just set up. And he hasn't had any income from the looks of it in Italy at all.
Okay. So I think the only way is via the voluntary contribution at this point. If he wants to enroll in the public system, he needs to ask his ASL for information on how to register for the iscrizione volontaria. You probably will be asked to give a self-declaration of your income, and then you will be advised on how much you have to pay. Just a small clarification, the voluntary scheme covers from January till December, and you always pay the same fee. So if you register now, say in April, you pay the same fee that you would have paid in January, but you're only covered till December. That's the way it works. So the advice is always to register early in the year because to take them to the most of it out of it. So if you want to register for healthcare, the only way is the voluntary scheme at this point. Unless, just one thing to add. If he opens a business, so he qualifies as self-employed, he could also try to register as self-employed. But at that point, you need to produce evidence that you have a partita IVA, that you have that you pay INPS contributions, or at least you have registered with INPS. And in most regions, they also ask you to prove that you're registered with the Chamber of Commerce or with a professional association. But that's another option. If the business is already, in place and is already qualifies as self-employed, you could try this option as well.
Okay, and linked to that, Roberto Petrarca is asking, we pay a voluntary contribution to SSN. We're retired but not yet in receipt of a UK pension, so presumably below UK pension age. Can they get the TAM cover, presumably the Testa Sanitaria cover, the TAM?
The answer is no, because the voluntary contribution doesn't give you entitlement to a TAM. So it gives you cover across Italy for any healthcare you have in Italy via the public system. But you are not entitled to a TAM. So when you travel to another EU country, the advice is always to buy private health insurance, which is the advice that we give to everyone, really, because the TAM is not a replacement of private travel insurance, because there are things that the TAM or the Ehic doesn't cover, like medical repatriation, for example. So it's all. In your case, if you can have a TAM, it's even more important to get travel insurance with a good health cover.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Even when traveling to the UK.
Yes. Don't forget that. Alistair Forrest asks, he says he got residency before Brexit last year. He's 58, so he's got no state pension, but he has a private pension and he doesn't work. Will his voluntary contributions to the Italian system be based on his personal pension and rental income that he has? And should he take out private healthcare as well? Well, presumably on the basis of your last answer, private healthcare might well be a wise thing to do anyway, particularly since he's not yet at S1 level.
So if he wants to register voluntarily, it will be up to the ASL really to ask him for what evidence he needs to produce. In my experience, I think evidence of his private pension should be sufficient. So it really depends if he wants both, if he wants public cover and private cover, so the two together. But it's really up to, it's a personal decision really. It's not something that we can advise you on what is best. In current times, it's probably good to be registered in the public health system, because as we were saying before, you also have an entitlement to the vaccine, for example. So while with the private cover, you don't have that at the moment. So it's really a personal decision on what your priorities are according to your circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Carol Bond says she's been resident here for the last 3 years. She only tried to register for healthcare last year. She's retired but not yet at state pension age. And the ASLA said she wasn't entitled to register because she'd never paid tax in Italy. And she's saying, is this right? She says, I'm worried about not getting the COVID vaccine because they won't let me register.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what we were saying before, there's no automatic entitlement to register for healthcare on the basis of your residency. You must have paid social security contributions to have an entitlement. So the way to register is via the voluntary contribution, the voluntary registration. I'm aware, because I had feedback from a number of people, that sometimes the ASL doesn't give the correct information, so they just send you away and say you're not entitled, that's it, you cannot register. But probably people are not very well informed, but we can confirm that you can use the voluntary scheme. Apart from Umbria, where there is this particular situation, in all other regions there is information about registering in the voluntary scheme. So I would advise you to go back to your ASL, even in writing, if you can, send an email and request information on how to register for iscrizione volontaria.
Okay. We've still got plenty of questions coming in. Thank you, folks, because obviously we want to try and deal with as many of your concerns as we can. Rachel Zara says she moved to Lazio last year, registered for residency. She's got her residence certificate dated in December. But when she went to her ASLA to get the tessera sanitaria, they said they didn't know how to deal with her because they didn't know whether she was EU or international. And she says the whole process seems to have stalled now, and she's not got either, she's not got her ID card or any healthcare because they're not quite sure what category she falls into. I imagine she's not the only one. Anybody?
Yeah, maybe on the ID card, I think that's connected to the residency rather than the healthcare. So maybe colleagues might want to add something to that. On the healthcare, unfortunately, you were given incorrect information. There is a bit of confusion at the moment we are finding in some offices, and we have raised this also with the ministry. The ministry has issued a further circular to clarify that UK nationals covered under the withdrawal agreement don't need any extra document to prove their entitlement. So the residency status is enough, the residency document is enough to show that they have an entitlement in the same way as an EU national. So I'm sorry to hear you are in this situation. I would advise you to send us a message via the contact form, the consular contact form in the Living Guides, so we can understand which is the office that misunderstood the process, and we can maybe get in touch with them to try and help you.
And linked to that,
Aidan, would it be? Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, Aidan, give Vito a break for 1 minute.
Well, Vito's done an absolutely sterling job.
She is. No, I was just going to say a few words, and Federica jump in about. We keep talking about. If you're protected by the withdrawal agreement. And I think it's important just to remember how you can show you're covered by the withdrawal agreement. It is not only by the famous new Carta di Soggiorno Elettronica, which is now being issued by your Questura to people covered by the withdrawal agreement. We are advising people to request that, but your rights don't depend on having it. So, for example, rights to healthcare, Vito was talking about what you can show your local healthcare office, health registration office. There are many ways that you can show other providers and other government departments that you are covered by the withdrawal agreement. It could be your EU residency document, which remains valid despite the fact that the transition period has ended. It could be the also famous Attestazione di Iscrizione Anagrafica, which was started to be issued last year under the withdrawal agreement, or it could be the new Carta di Soggiorno Elettronica. It could be a Certificato di Residenza if it's still valid. So you can see there's just masses of ways you can show that you're covered by the withdrawal agreement. And you could even, if you haven't yet registered your residency, but you've got evidence that you were settled in Italy before the end of last year, you could show, for example, other documentation as well. So it's if you're hearing, I suppose my message is, if you're hearing from your ASL or from other providers that you can't do what you want to do because you haven't got the Carta di Soggiorno Elettronica issued under the withdrawal agreement, but you feel that you are covered by the withdrawal agreement because you were resident in Italy before the end of last year, then get in touch with us via our contact form on Living In Guide, because your rights do not depend on holding that Carta di Soggiorno Elettronica.
Yeah, but obviously it's going to be a very useful card to have, just because so many people do ask for it. And the good news is that it is now beginning to be issued. Is that right, the plastic card? Because we've got a question from David and Patricia Llewellyn. Why are the Questura taking so long? Well, they're saying to give appointments, to get the Tessera Elettronica. But we've also obviously had people asking how long does it take to actually get hold of this card in my hand?
Yeah, so I mean, just to be clear, I mean, it wasn't launched till the beginning of January. So I considered, I think we consider this still early days. As you say, Aidan, it's a really useful document to have. So please don't misunderstand me. You should definitely get it. But your rights don't depend on it. So before you get it, there are other ways of evidencing your status under the withdrawal agreement. We do know there was a pilot in producing it. Some technology had to be updated and slightly changed, but we are aware now that people are being notified that their card will shortly be ready for collection. And we have been told by the ministry from this point on, it should be around 20 days from the date of your appointment to the issuing of the card. Now, obviously, that 20 days, it's not 20 days for people who've already applied, people who applied in January or February, quite clearly. But the cards are beginning to be issued and things should speed up from this point on. Federica, would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, we're hoping for that. And we are seeing that the questuras are starting to get a pace that is a little bit faster when it comes to the appointment and issuance of the card. Hopefully we will see some very soon. Okay,
thank you. I've got a question from Marion G, vaccines and Umbria problems. She said she's in Umbria. She said her comune have only asked her for codice fiscale to make an appointment for the vaccine. But obviously, since we've been having a discussion about not being able to get it unless you registered with and got a Tessera Sanitaria, she's saying, is that going to be a problem? She said, I can't register for healthcare because I'm in Umbria, so voluntary contributions aren't available to me. She's worried, obviously, that she's likely to run into a problem while she's waiting for the vaccine because she hasn't actually got registered.
I think it's a possibility because I, speaking to the authorities in Umbria recently, I was informed that when you get the vaccine, you also need to give the details of your Tessera Sanitaria. So even though the booking system only requires the codice fiscale, that also needs to be linked to your Tessera Sanitaria. So I really hope that you manage to have the vaccine and that you are lucky and you won't be asked for this number. For this Tessera Sanitaria number, but it's a possibility that there might be a problem there. According to what I heard also from other people in Umbria who are not able to get the vaccine because they're not registered for healthcare. Sorry.
Okay.
Good luck.
Yes, absolutely. A quick plug, if I can. We're doing a survey for UK nationals in the EU and EFTA states on rights under the withdrawal agreement. There's a link in the Facebook page in the description of the Facebook session, and the questionnaire will be available on YouTube at the end of this hour. So please do, if you haven't already filled it in, please do, because it's really helpful for us to gather information about the various people that we're reaching and to find out what other things we could be doing to reach them more effectively. So we'd be very grateful if you haven't already completed that survey, if you would do so. It won't take you very long, and we'd really value your contributions. Somebody, Elisabetta Medvedeva, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. She says, how long will there be assistance with the issues that we're bumping up against with the Italian authorities from 1, the consulate, the embassy, from 2, IOM? Obviously, I'm sure these sessions have been useful for people, and certainly the work that's been going on behind the scenes has been. And I suspect 1 or 2 other people would share Elisabetta's question. Jerry, do you want to say anything about that?
I thought that one would come to me. I mean, I would underline that, we've always had fantastic consular teams, and that if you are having serious difficulties, whether it's related to healthcare, residency, or any other matter in Italy, then, there are lots of ways to get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us via our Living in Italy page. You can get in touch with us by calling the embassy switchboard and you'll be put through. And that is a 24/7 service. So if you have an urgent need to speak to someone, you will speak to someone. And the consular teams, both in Milan and in Rome, are there to support you. So that's not changing. That's, they're there and they're there to support you. And we are fantastically grateful to the help that IOM have been providing to UK nationals, specifically on residency and registration, and supporting those who are protected by the withdrawal agreement to regulate their status basically in Italy. And so, yes, we're very much looking forward to continue to work with them and the fantastic work that they're doing. So lots of support available there. But as I say, if I may do a little plug as well, always the first port of call is our Living in Italy page on gov.uk. Lots and lots of information there, including really fantastic information on healthcare, with thanks to Vito. So a whole guide to how to register for healthcare in Italy, what all your options are. It talks about the S1. It talks about registering as a worker, as self-employed. It has information on voluntary contributions. So please have a look at that. And if you still haven't found the answer to your question, at the bottom of our page, there's a link to how to get in touch with us.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jerry. Ross Bryan, for those employed in Italy working for international organisations such as FAO, World Food Programme, are we entitled? He's put into the involuntary scheme. He said, I visited my local ASLA and they told me different to what is said in relation to employed status online. I mean, do people working for those organisations, are they in a slightly different category to people who are, in a sense, just in regular employment, who just register in the normal way with no particular different status?
Yeah, I think they are in a different situation because they don't appear in the Italian social security system, so they're covered through private health insurance. My understanding is that it shouldn't be a problem to register under the voluntary scheme, but as I'm hearing more and more comments about the ASL just saying that if you have private health insurance, you can register on the voluntary scheme. I want to do some more research around that, because to be honest, it didn't come across before, and I wasn't aware of this requirement. It might well be the case if it's coming from different sources, but I'm not able to confirm now. I will double check, and as I said, we'll try to add something in the write-up in the follow-up to this session to see if we can clarify that.
And Vito, would it be worth mentioning if you're posted to an international organisation, or you have a special status here, so you're accredited with the MFA, for example, that might be another group of people who potentially could use, am I right in saying, an S1 to register for healthcare, if that's what they were eligible for?
If they're eligible to an S1, it really depends on on the way the organisation is organized, sorry for the repetition, but in the way the organisation works in the UK, the type of status of the organisation. So we know that in some cases, if you work for a UK company and you're posted to another EU country to provide services in that country and work locally, then you are entitled to an S1, for example. That these are called posted workers. We also know there are other categories of posted workers that are accredited with the MFA, like people with diplomatic status. They might get an S1, but I understand not all organizations have this possibility. So it really depends on the type of organization, and the best thing is always to ask human resources, the central office of the organization you work for advice on what kind of cover you get.
Okay, thank you. I've just lost the question I was going to write. Okay, Neil Baghurst says he's lived in Italy, worked in Italy for 20 years. He just tried to check online to check out some medical results, but the system blocked him, saying he was a third country national. And he says, how can I check my healthcare status? Have we heard anything about this? Is this perhaps tied in with the whole computer systems not recognising our UK citizens sort of slightly different status to third country nationals or full EU citizens? I mean, is it?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds a very sort of regional system, because not everywhere.
He's in Torino.
Okay, so in Piemonte. So in terms of checking your medical records, I think it's very much localized according to the system that is in place in each region. It's sometimes very much localized in each hospital, depending on where you do the test. So, for example, in Lazio, we don't have this kind of system where you can check all your medical records online, not that I'm aware of. So in Piemonte, there might be a problem there with the online system, where they have updated information about UK national, the third country national. But it's the first time I hear about this problem in this context. I know that in Piemonte, the authorities are aware of the circular from the ministry that people that are covered under the withdrawal agreement shouldn't be required to prove anything else, and their rights remain protected, because I have contact with the ASL in Torino. So I would advise you to contact your ASL just to make sure that your healthcare registration is still valid, that they haven't changed anything. And then if there is a problem with this particular system, perhaps you just raise it with them as well, just to make it clear. And if you don't manage to resolve it, as we were saying before, just get in touch with us, and we will try and look into it.
Okay, thank you. This is, I'll just read out a question from Karen, which is something that we dealt with slightly earlier, but it might just be worth repeating. I'm a British citizen living in Italy for over 30 years. I also have Italian citizenship. If I travel to the UK, will I need health insurance? I have got a tessera sanitaria.
I like this question. Yeah, no, the tessera, the Italian TEAM, the European Health Insurance Card, so the back of your tessera sanitaria covers you when you travel to the UK, will continue to be valid in the UK for any necessary care. So if you're visiting, so obviously not if you're moving to the UK, but if you're there on a visit and Italy is, and you're registered for healthcare in Italy, that card will definitely be valid for you, your family. It doesn't matter if you're covered under the withdrawal agreement. That's the part of the trade and cooperation agreement that improved the rights that were already protected for UK nationals covered under the withdrawal agreement, as that card will remain valid for everyone, not just UK nationals covered under the withdrawal agreement. So anyone living in Italy, traveling to the UK with the Italian term will be covered.
Okay, thank you. Julia Hatch, I recently applied for the new UK Ehic equivalent and was told my S1 hadn't been activated. I've been receiving Italian healthcare, so surely it must have been activated.
Yeah, it's not about the S1 not being activated. It's about your S1 registration being notified to the relevant UK authority. So to be entitled to a UK Ehic, the overseas healthcare team needs to have confirmation that your S1 was registered in Italy. So they need to have a record of that. I think it's often the case that it might take a bit of time for these processes to be finalized, because as you can imagine, there's quite a lot of requests, especially towards the end of last year. There was a rush for people to apply for the S1s, register them. So there might be a backlog of applications that are just pending and just need to be processed. But if your S1 has been registered in Italy, it will eventually appear in the UK record. So obviously, if it takes 6 months, after a while, I would advise you to just double check with your ASL that the notification of S1 registration was sent to the UK, just to make sure. But just to reassure you, even if you don't have an S1, even if you don't have a UK Ehic and you need to travel, you can always apply for this replacement certificate of an Ehic. So of course, it's nice to have the card, but if you need to travel on holiday and for some reason you didn't get it and you need treatment, you just need to call the overseas healthcare team and request the provisional replacement card, and it will be issued to you independently from the S1 record in the UK or not. So you will continue to be covered.
Okay, great, thank you. I've got an anonymous question on YouTube, and I think it's worth just flagging this up. Somebody's saying, if we can't fly back to the UK, but we're not part of Italy's healthcare system, so I'm assuming not a registered resident, how long do we have to isolate at home for? Surely the vaccine should be given to all. Well, I think you said earlier, Vittoria, that if you're not registered for the Italian healthcare system, you're not on the list for the vaccine, certainly at the moment. I think it is also worth pointing out that there are flights back to the UK. There hasn't ever been a point when there haven't been flights back to the UK. And so if you are in Italy as a non-resident, technically the 31st of March is the end of your 90 days in visa-free in Italy, because it started to run from the 1st of January, sort of regardless of when you actually arrived in Italy. If you arrived earlier, and if you arrived later, you've got 90 days. I mean, the basic message is you really ought to get yourself back to the UK and get the vaccine there if that's your home. Because obviously if you reach a point where you go past your 90 days visa-free, technically you're unlawfully in Italy. And there could be consequences, financial and otherwise, if you do that. So I think the message for anybody who's not a resident and who's still in Italy is, look, there are still flights, not a lot, but there's a daily flight from Fiumicino. I think there's a daily flight from Milan to London. Really would encourage you to explore those flights as soon as possible. It's complicated with the COVID testing regime and expensive, but it could get pretty complicated if you overstay the 90-day visa-free and then get into complications with the authorities in Italy. So, I think it would be a mistake for us not to say, look, you really do need to explore getting back to the UK where your home is and getting into the vaccination programme there as soon as you can.
Shall I just say, Aidan, thank you for that. I think that's really important. I'll just say a few more words in addition to that, if it's helpful.
Yeah.
Is that, as you say, it's really about deciding what your intentions are, where you want to settle. If you arrived in Italy before the end of last year, then yes, there's the 90 days, but because you were in Italy before the end of last year, you sort of had the opportunity to prove to the authorities you were enjoying your freedom of movement rights and therefore regulate your status. And if you haven't ever registered, that would be first with the Questura, and then with your new biometric Carta di Soggiorno Elettronica, you would then register your residency with the town hall. But for those who arrived in Italy after the 1st of January, that's where the clock really starts ticking. So there's a little bit of a difference between those who arrived before the end of last year, because they did so under freedom of movement rules. And, as long as you can then evidence that you're fulfilling the freedom of movement criteria when you go to the Questura to regulate your status, then you have a legal status in Italy. Whereas people who arrived in Italy from the 1st of January, that's where the 90 days and 180 days really starts ticking, because we know that for those not covered by the withdrawal agreement, the visa-free travel, as you say, is the 90 and 180 days. So I hope that sort of just shows that there is a difference between the people who arrived before the end of the transition period, potentially, and the people who arrived from after the 1st of January.
And I guess what that throws up for people who arrived before the end of the transition period is a question: where do I want to be long term? Do I want to make my home in Italy and go through the registration process, or am I actually a resident of the UK, in which case the 90 days then becomes relevant again?
Yeah, and also on the vaccine, Aidan, I just wanted to add quickly that if the question that was asked, the last question was asked, is actually from someone who is registered resident, but not registered on the healthcare system, which might also be the case.
I'm just getting some more information, actually, Vito, that the person is a resident but has private healthcare insurance.
Yeah, so that's what we mentioned before. And just to reiterate, we are aware there is a gap. At the moment, there is no provision. We are certainly aware, and we are engaging just to understand when the vaccine will be made, engaging with the Italian authorities, just to understand when the vaccine could be made available to everyone living in Italy, not just those registered in the healthcare system. So we will certainly let you know when we have news. At the moment, you need to continue to shield at home, as we're all doing, as at the moment the vaccination is not widely available. Very few people manage to have it. So just continue to protect, to be careful, and hopefully soon we will be able to share more information about your entitlement to get the vaccine.
Okay, thank you. I'm just scrolling quickly through to pick up questions. We've had a number of questions about registration and driving licenses and a variety of other things. I mean, our focus today is principally on healthcare and benefits. So I just want to see if there's any further questions that we haven't actually covered. A question from Fiona Bertozzi, I don't think we covered. We've been told we can't have private healthcare when applying for a test of sanitaria. We're under pension age, 3 years residency, and we want to make voluntary contributions to the SSN.
Yeah, I think this is related to the questions we took before about apparently there being some private health insurance not being compatible with the voluntary scheme, which, as I said, I need to do a bit of research about, because it's something that it's recently been raised, but I wasn't aware of this before. So I will let you know in the write-up if I manage to find information about this requirement.
Okay, thank you, Vittoria. Bear with me, just we have had a number of people asking about, and this is entirely unconnected. I don't know whether you can give us a quick answer on this, Jerry. Just asking about what's the state of play regarding driving licenses. I know this is a diversion from healthcare, but it's clearly an issue that is really bothering people, understandably.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm very happy to talk about driving licenses if lots of people have been asking questions. So currently, I'll just be absolutely clear. If you are resident in Italy and you've been officially registered as a resident for more than 12 months, you need to use an Italian driving license. You can no longer use a UK driving license driving in Italy, and you need to retake your test to get an Italian license. If you are a UK national and you've been living in Italy for 12 months or less, you can continue to use your UK driving licence. But within those 12 months, you should get an Italian licence. And again, you'd need to retake your test to get an Italian licence. Now, we are negotiating with the Italian government right now on a future agreement to protect the rights for UK nationals to be able to exchange their driving licence for a local one without having to take a test. So those negotiations are ongoing. And as soon as we have more information, of course, we would publish that information online. Just to add to that, I know people aren't travelling very much at the moment, but when people do start to travel and you perhaps have family and friends coming to see you in Italy, hiring cars, they can use their UK driving licence and they don't need an international driver's permit alongside their licence. So no additional paperwork's needed for visitors coming to see you in Italy.
Great, thank you. We've also got, I don't think we've got any unanswered questions specifically on health that haven't sort of been covered either specifically or in answers to other people's questions. I don't know if we're obviously very close to the end, and we've got a number of questions about the biometric card. Somebody's asking if they applied for the biometric, they haven't applied for the biometric card as they're moving to a new town and the move has now been delayed. Can we still get the card? Federica,
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
is it a good idea just to get the card first, even, and then sort out a change in address later?
Definitely. I mean, it's very important to mention that there is no deadline to obtain the biometric card, so there's no rush for that. Clearly, we understand that there is appetite to just have the card in your wallet to just easily evidence your rights under the withdrawal agreement, and we encourage, as Aidan pointed out before, to request the card at the Questura, but in the specific case of the person, I mean, I would consider applying for the biometric card at the Questura of the current home before the moving. That would probably make it easier to evidence the residency and the registration without having to demonstrate the move and requesting an attestato di residenza storica and to evidence the differences. So there's no deadline, that is for sure, and also the timeline for the issuance of the card, as we were mentioning before, is not immediate, and so just I wouldn't hold my breath on that. And yeah, and also just to specify that on the biometric card, the address will not be showcased, basically. So it's the address of the residency will not be shown. So just to clarify that.
And a number of people have asked about delays and what have you with the card. I'm being told to wait by the Questura. I mean, it's a bit of a varied picture across the country, isn't it? In terms of the different Questura, the large and busy Questura with lots of British nationals, or the smaller places. It's going to vary quite a lot, isn't it, for people in terms of how quickly they get an appointment, how quickly they get their card, etc. Is that so, Federica?
Yeah. And Sorry, no, I was just going to say, just to reassure people that would jump in, if you're already a resident and you've got an EU residency document, that document remains valid under the terms of the withdrawal agreement. That document is valid, despite the fact the transition period has ended. So I know, obviously, the new Carta di Soggiorno Elettronica is by far the easiest way to evidence your rights under the withdrawal agreement. But until you get it, your residency document remains valid, and you should have also, and correct me if I'm wrong, Federica, but you should also have been issued with a receipt if you've had the appointment, which also is evidence of your status until you get the new card.
Definitely, yes. When you attend your Questura for your appointment, a receipt will be issued, and that will prove that you applied for the biometric card. You requested the biometric card, and it's evidence of your lawful say in Italy, basically. Yeah.
I'm conscious that it's just after 6 now, and I think we're probably going to need to wrap it up. Maybe a good way to finish is with what's probably a relatively urgent question from Zelda Stewart, who's a long-time resident in Italy, covered by Italian state healthcare, and has to return to the UK for a family funeral, and just saying, do I need private healthcare insurance to cover my trip?
No, you don't. You can travel to the UK and bring with you the Tessera Sanitaria Europea, your Tessera Sanitaria, which includes your health insurance health card at the back. So you are covered through that card. You can take travel insurance. It's always advisable to take it because the TEAM is not an alternative to travel insurance. But in terms of necessary care, you will be covered through your TEAM in the UK. So I think we can finish by saying that we understand there's still a bit of confusion about cover when you're traveling. So just to make sure that it's clear that the European health insurance scheme remains valid. So UK residents traveling to Italy will be covered through their UK Ehic or the new Ghic, which will replace the Ehic, but as the same type of cover. And EU residents, in this case Italian residents, will be covered through their TEAM. And of course, we have like S1 holders will continue to be covered through their UK Ehic. There's information about visiting the UK and what kind of cover you have when you travel in the very useful link on the NHS pages. So when visiting England, for example, there's very useful page on the different types of entitlements.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's probably us, folks. I'm very sorry if we've missed any of your questions. We've tried to cover as many as we could. I know that we've missed one or two questions about other issues that weren't specifically related to healthcare and benefits, and I'm sorry we didn't get onto those, but obviously this was our focus today. I hope it's been useful. There will be a write-up, obviously, that you'll be able to see, and we haven't yet come to the end of our plans for further outreach events, but anything further that's organised will be advertised in the usual ways, so keep a lookout for them. And as Jerry has said, you know, if you are coming across authorities who are misapplying the rules, then obviously contact us. If there are residency questions, contact IOM, let us know, because obviously if we don't know, we can't help you, and we also can't challenge the authorities and make sure they get it right. But I hope this session has been useful. Very big thanks in particular to Vito, who's done most of the talking and deserves a large tea and a long drink now. Thank you to Federica from IOM, to Jerry as ever, who's the stalwart, who's around at everything the whole time. And thank you for your contributions. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for taking part. And we look forward to seeing some of you again in the future. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Okay, please stay there. Okay, stay there. Okay.